I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world where somebody tells me that, hey, you can't go out to eat. Hey, you can't enjoy the pizza. Hey, you can't enjoy those bagels, because food brings enjoyment. And food doesn't have to just be looked at as like this thing that fuels our body and that's it. It's social. You have your taste buds for a reason, and we want it to be fun and we want it to be enjoyable. So if we marry that mindset to this approach, it really actually does become fun. Are there days where maybe you're like, the last thing I want to do is track my food? Yes. But if you choose to have a relationship to it where you understand that this is going to help bring awareness to get you to where you want to go, it doesn't become such a nuisance anymore. But you need time to be able to start to feel that way. You literally need to get your reps in. We've all been newbies in the gym at some point or another, and it's nerve-wracking and it's never really fun to walk into a gym for the first time, or maybe after a long time away. Like, I know that if I've gotten off my gym routine, I really have to talk myself into hitting my workout, and you have to get your reps in. And if you get your reps in, you will get stronger. The same idea holds true when it comes to your nutrition. And if you put the two together, well, then you have the recipe for the utmost success. And I think that's really awesome.
Let's link up with Krysta on The Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What's going on, Fix listeners? Welcome back to episode 94, our latest episode of the Fix podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber, and I've got a bunch of things to go over before we get into today's episode. I, first and foremost, want to share with everybody that as of today, if you're listening to this episode live, we are officially back on our schedule of weekly podcast episodes. So that's right, you will get your fix 4 times a month instead of 2 as we roll into April of 2023. I'm very excited to be back on a slightly more regular schedule because you guys know I love to talk, and you know I've missed all of you, and we've tried to do our absolute best in making it all work with our 2 episode schedule, but this has been on my radar since early January. I'm pretty sure I put it out there in one of those episodes when we were talking about goals and what we wanted to accomplish in 2023, and this was absolutely one of mine. So with that said, little programming note in listening to these episodes, depending on where you're jumping in. If you are joining us for the first time and you're not familiar with the Fix, with the Fitness FYX program, this is the perfect episode for you, minus the fact that you might want to go back one more. So jump back to episode 93, because over the course of these 4 episodes, I've got one already in the books, this one right now, and then 2 more coming your way. They're going to explain exactly what we do inside of the Fitness FYX program, exactly how we support our clients in losing weight, getting tight, tone, lean, all the things people want going into the summer without having to feel so stressed out in the kitchen, feeling like you're showing up in the gym and doing all of the things and checking all of the boxes only to not really see results, or do it for X amount of time, whether that's a month, 2 months, 3, and then get frustrated and decide this isn't working for you. I'm spilling all the secret sauce, and one of the reasons why we're doing that, and the big announcement that I want to make in today's episode, is because we are launching our biggest giveaway ever. And I mean absolute biggest ever. So as of today, if you're listening to this episode live, we have officially opened applications for a giveaway for 6 months of free one-on-one coaching. That's right, 6 months of free one-on-one coaching. I've never done this before. It will likely be a while, probably not anytime through the rest of 2023, that we will do it again. So if you need a sign, if you've been here for a hot minute and you're like, you know what, I feel like I need to take the leap, I don't know how to give you a better sign than to go ahead and fill out the application. Literally no strings attached, right? Hey, maybe you don't get picked necessarily. There's literally the only commitment you're making is the 7 minutes that it will take you to fill out this application. And it could be the answer that you've been looking for in terms of finally losing the weight, keeping it off for good, and not feeling like you're on this hamster wheel where every year, right around that 30 to 45 day mark before Memorial Day, you say to yourself, oh shit, I guess I better wait until next year. I don't want that for you. And I want you to be able to go into your summer enjoying yourself versus feeling like you should have done something differently. So that is one of the big reasons why we're launching this giveaway now. But the other reason why we're doing it is because something else I've been teasing over the last several months is because the Fitness FYX team has grown. This is our official announcement that I now have 2 more coaches whose faces you'll be seeing way more of, not only on this podcast, but also on social media. So make sure you are following them. I'm going to drop their Instagram handles down in the show notes, but that is Coach Alyssa and Coach Kara, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce them over the course of the next few months, weeks, these couple episodes that we have running that kind of detail everything inside of the program. You just might see them as a part of those, but if you want to introduce yourself to them and you want to get to know them, fastest way to do it would be to go right over to Instagram, check out our Fitness FYX page too. So again, we'll drop all these links down in the show notes because we have so many to go through for today. But like I said, if you want to know exactly what we do with our clients to achieve the results that they get where they feel like they don't have to continue to diet for the rest of their life, then you should 100% keep listening to this episode. If you missed last week's, totally cool. I would encourage you to jump back and start with that one because that one goes over what we call our first phase inside of the program, which is our find phase. And that's where we really figure out, quite frankly, what the hell works for you and why it works for you and how to do it in a way that's truly sustainable and not this, balanced lifestyle that I should put in quotes because everybody's out there marketing it. I have a handful of clients who can attest that this truly is the method that's helped them understand how to do this for the rest of their life. That's helped them to get rid of the feelings of like, I'm going out to eat and I don't know what to do, or I need to skip out on this social event with my friends, or I feel like I'm going to the gym every single day and not seeing results. This is going to put an end to all that frustration, give you the answers that you're looking for, and what better time to potentially jump into doing it than to potentially win 6 months of coaching. So really excited to be able to grow this community and support Coach Kara and Coach Alyssa in getting to know more of you, but also have them just help bring the Fitness FYX to new heights. And it's been really awesome for me to be able to now kind of step into like a little bit more of a coach mentoring role and not just be the one who's having that coach to client relationship and just see them shine. And I can't wait as our rosters continue to grow and we're accepting new clients over the course of the next several weeks. We are gearing up for a very fun summer. So with all that said, let's get right to it. Last week, we talked about the find phase. This week, we are going to talk about the fuel phase, which is the second phase that our clients walk through inside of the Fitness FYX program. Now, the fuel phase is, frankly, in my opinion, the most important phase that you will focus on inside of this program. And here's why. And this might not make sense the first time you hear it, so I'm going to explain it a couple ways. This is my thought process when it comes to truly losing weight, losing body fat, changing your physique. You actually have to spend more time learning how to not diet. Yes, I said learning how to not diet. And when I say the word diet, I don't just mean what you're eating. I mean specifically being in a calorie deficit, aka consuming fewer calories than you're actually burning so that you lose body fat. Because here's the deal, and this is an important thing to understand before we get into the nitty-gritty details of this episode. Doesn't matter what approach you take, whether that is tracking macros, whether that is following some other sort of diet, whatever you want to call it, you have to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose body fat, meaning whatever output your activity level is that has to surpass the fuel that you're putting into your body. Now, here's where that gets a little bit hairy. The typical scenario that we see with 99.9% of our clients is that they're coming to us having spent months, maybe weeks, more like years, consuming anywhere from 12 to 1,300 calories. And in describing this, I am usually cautious to put a lot of numbers on this, but I think it's important just to be able to talk through it and also say, like, there's a lot of caveats and a lot of asterisks to what I'm about to describe, in that if you're just generally a smaller person, 12 or 1,300 calories might be adequate for you. But for most people, that's not necessarily the case. And when I say a smaller person, I mean somebody that's like a little more petite. Now, here's the problem. Regardless of what your current shape or size is, most of us are dealing with a lot of stress in our lives, both the good and the bad. We have things coming at us in all different directions. And the reason I say both the good and the bad is because we need to understand that even exercise is a form of stress. It demands the body to do something that it needs energy to actually do, right? And if we're taking a system that already has a lot going on and putting more stress on top of it, we may actually be putting ourselves in a position that in the long run, keyword there, makes it harder to not only lose body fat, but to really actually keep that weight off too. So that's what we really unpack inside of the second phase of the program. And what we specifically do, because I did promise that I would give you the exact details, is we actually teach our clients how to intentionally eat more food. And yes, I did say eat more food. Now, what do I mean by eat more food? Because the next thing that's going to come out of my mouth is, yes, you can eat more and still lose weight. But there is a lot underneath that, and there are a lot of different things that we look at to really make that actually work. And here's what I mean. So let's take a client, for example. I'm going to walk you guys through a story of a current client of ours who has had tremendous success inside of the Fitness FYX program over the course of the last several months, and she's crushing it. We just completed the fuel phase. She's moving into the focus phase, which I'll share on more next week. But here's how her story kind of started off. So she came to me a couple months ago. It was back in like October. And she was that person who was consistently eating somewhere around 1,200 to 1,300 calories every time she attempted to lose weight. And in doing that, it would work. Because technically speaking, she was in that calorie deficit. She was burning more calories than what she was consuming. But here was the problem. She could do that consistently with a cap. That cap was maybe 2 to 3 months at a time. So she might lose 5, 7, even 10 pounds. But in the process of doing so, her workouts really suffered. Her sleep quality was really poor. Her digestion wasn't so great. Nothing's TMI here on the Fix. And she just didn't feel like she actually had any control. And here's why. In this example, and this is, again, a very common story with a lot of the clients that we work with, she had tried meal plan-based diets out there, the Nutrisystems of the world, the Jenny Craigs of the world. And it would work for her for a time. Why? Because things seemed like they were easier. She was spending less time in the kitchen, right? Heating up her food. That's really all she had to do. And the mental load of not having to think about exactly what she was going to consume was taken out because she just had this exact meal plan that she was following. That's actually the biggest problem, because here's what happened to her. If a weekend rolled around and she wanted to go out with friends, socialize at night, have some drinks, enjoy herself, she's in her 20s, she would then let those other foods go by the wayside and say, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of eat what I want to eat. Now, what happens if you have that cycle Monday through Thursday of, okay, I've got this structure of these meals that I'm consuming, but then every Friday, Saturday that rolls around, or Saturday, Sunday rolls around, and I just kind of eat what I want to eat. The 1,200 and 1,300 calories that she had set up for her using those pre-prepped meals totally went out the window. So instead, she put herself in this cycle where maybe 70% of the week she was in that calorie deficit, but we don't even know exactly what her consumption looked like on the weekends. And most of the time, it was significantly higher than those 1,300 calories, because she had shared with me, I would then want to eat foods that I felt I wasn't allowed to have, and I didn't have control around them. We've all been there. At least I know I have, so I could 100% relate to this. But the chips, the pretzels, all those sorts of things where it's like, okay, like I'm at a party and there's a big bowl of these things. most people don't have a lot of control in those situations. And if you haven't figured this out yet, going on some sort of meal plan approach diet, something with pre-prepped foods or anything like that, is actually making those situations worse because they're not teaching you how the pretzels, the chips, and those things can truly fit into your day, because they can. And that's what we get to inside of this phase. So continuing along with the story of this client, we figured out that for the most part, her calories were actually pretty all over the place. So maybe it was 1,300 calories for, like I said, some kind of like just long enough kind of timeline, but not long enough that she could actually stick to it and say to herself, okay, great, I'm going to eat these meals from Nutrisystem, from Jenny Craig for the rest of my life and be totally fine with that. And then I'll just do whatever I want on the weekends. That turned into every few months her feeling like she was basically losing and regaining the same 10, 15 pounds. What was worse though, is she didn't feel well. Her energy levels were not there. Her digestion was really poor. And she had just gotten into CrossFit. She wanted to learn how to strength train the right way. And she felt like something was missing for her. Something was missing when it came to the freedom and the flexibility of wanting to enjoy the things that she liked to have in her diet, the social events that she liked to hang out with her friends on the weekends and all that good stuff. And she was like, I know there has to be another way. So that was the reason why she reached out to me. And that's exactly what we've walked through since the end of October into early November of 2022. Now fast forward into 2023. So here's what we did. For the first couple weeks of us working together, we went through that find phase as described in our last episode. And I had her start off by not defining the amount of food that she should be consuming. I asked her with no judgment, just eat how you normally eat, but track all of that information for me. Why? Because it would allow me to meet her where she is. And we described the value of that in that last episode and talking through the find phase. But here's the 10-second version of it. It's the idea that if we instead step our goals and say to ourselves, okay, great, like there is a defined amount of food that we do ultimately want to get to, but recognize that if it takes us 2 weeks to get there or 4 weeks to get there, if we can get there and actually consistently stay there, that's more valuable than how fast we get there in the first place. Because we're looking for consistency and we have to create an environment that will make that consistency that much easier. So that's what we unpack inside of this phase. So if we want to create an environment where consistency is easier, this is the whole idea around intentionally eating more food. And I think the key word here is intentional, because if you're familiar with different approaches to losing body fat, what I'm actually describing, this phase that we go through that's called our fuel phase, where we're intentionally eating more food, it's sometimes referred to as reverse dieting. And reverse dieting can get a bad rap. And one of the reasons why it can get a bad rap is because it's really stuck around this principle of like, let's eat as much food as possible and see how our body's going to respond to it. And that's not really actually what's going on here. What's happening is we're just cleaning things up. Frankly, like we're taking this person away from her really restrictive behavior Monday through Friday that was then actually leading her to throw everything away on the weekends. The weekends could have looked like 2,500 calories. They could have looked like 2,000. They could have looked like 1,800. We don't even know, because it was just like, okay, I'm free on Saturdays and Sundays and I have so much restriction on me Monday through Friday that I'm just going to focus on what I do on Monday through Friday and hopefully that'll get me most of the way there. That's no way to live. So instead, we put together a plan, one, first and foremost, based off of protein, because protein is the most important when it comes to losing body fat. Why? It helps you with recovery. It helps you with muscle retention. And for anybody out there who wants that lean and toned look, what you're actually saying is that you really want to build muscle. This is where the idea of a reverse diet and of intentionally eating more food becomes so beneficial. It becomes beneficial because of the fact that, unlike a calorie deficit where you're trying to lose body fat and intentionally eating less, when you intentionally eat more food, you're putting your body in a position to actually put muscle on your frame. You need to fuel your body. It is the equivalent of thinking about driving around in your car with next to no gas left. You're constantly going to have to be on the lookout for a gas station. Your body is very much the same in that if you demand it to go exercise, to, even as I'm sitting here doing this podcast, I am literally demanding my body to use the energy that it has, demanding that it uses that fuel. If I'm just barely giving it what it needs, what happens? It's not able to perform. I'm not able to get my words out. I'm not able to think straight. I'm not able to get the most out of my workouts. That on and on and on, and like continuing to do that over and over again, your body gets really smart. And what it says is, well, we have to do all these things. We have to perform. Our organs still need to function. Our brain still needs to perform in all these situations too. So we're just going to figure out how to adapt, and we're just going to figure out how to deal with whatever you're giving us right now. And that's where we start to store body fat, because we're like, okay, I need that energy. I need to somehow get this fuel. So instead, you're fighting this uphill battle because you're telling your body, I'm consistently going to restrict and restrict and restrict. And if you do that, your body's smart enough to be like, okay, great. Well, we're just going to work with what we got. So let's change that narrative for you. That's where reverse dieting and that's where the fuel phase really come together to make that happen. So with this client in particular, we figured out that she had a really solid amount of protein intake. If you're sitting here and you're like, well, I want to calculate my protein, fast and easy way to do it, like we shared in our last episode, take either your body weight, and per pound of body weight, that's the number of grams of proteins you should be consuming. So let's say you're 150 pounds, 150 grams of protein is not a bad place to start. She was already pretty close to that expectation of where we needed her to be. As discussed in our last episode, a lot of people need to spend some time just working up to that protein goal. But in this case, she was like, okay, I get it. I understand the importance of protein. I can double down on that. What we did see though, Monday through Thursday, Friday, looked pretty solid. The weekends were pretty all over the place. When it comes to our carbohydrate intake and when it comes to our fat intake, one of the biggest things that you might not realize is getting in the way of you achieving your goals is if you eat out multiple times a week, but in particular, let's just keep it to the weekends. If you're eating out 3 to 4 meals over the weekend, or maybe 2 dinners out over the weekend, I can promise you, unless you're being intentional, you're not getting enough protein, because the meal you're having out is going to be mostly carbohydrates and mostly fat. There's butters and oils that restaurants cook in that you're not even aware of. And then generally speaking, our portion sizes, if you were to really analyze what's on your plate, the amount of protein, the animal meat or whatever that source is for you that's present is not nearly as high as the carbohydrates or the fat. It doesn't make them bad. But what the problem is you're not looking at it from this lens of how that choice fits into the rest of your day and the rest of your week. And that's exactly what we did with this client. We talked about it and we strategized and we said, okay, great. We know that we want to go out on the weekends. So if that's the case, let's put our body in a position to where it can, one, adapt and handle that food. And that's what we have to do over time with a little bit of patience, which is also usually where people get frustrated. The fuel phase is one of the most important phases because, as I said to kick this off, this is where you learn how to not diet. This is where you learn how to eat the foods that you intend to enjoy when you're in these social settings. When maybe when you want to order because you've had a long day and you want to order Uber Eats or DoorDash or something like that, and you don't really want to think twice about the food that you're consuming that day. What's even more to this whole protein and muscle story is that the more muscle you have on your frame, the more you can kind of get away with those situations where you don't always make the absolute healthy choice. What I like to share with our clients is that you want to think about muscle almost as if it's like a sponge, meaning that the more muscle you have on your frame, the more you can kind of handle those less nutritious foods. Again, not saying that foods are good versus bad, not saying that, we should eat absolutely whatever we want all the time. Our health is also internal just as much as we're focused on the external of how we look, but paying attention to how we feel, paying attention to, lab work and things like that. However, where most people tend to get this whole reverse dieting thing wrong, as I was saying, is it's just a matter of like eating way more than you ever have in your life. No, it's eating more with intent. It's eating more with structure. It's eating more of the right combinations of foods, of the right amount of protein, and then the right amount of carbs and fat for your body. Well, how do we figure out what that is? We match it with a lot of other data. And this is where the help of a coach can really come in. All of our clients within 2 to 3 weeks of them joining the Fitness FYX program, get into the habit of recording their sleep, the number of hours that they actually slept, their sleep quality. Did you toss and turn throughout the night? Did you wake up a lot? And, did you get out of bed? How did you have a hard time falling asleep? All that sort of stuff. Their digestion. How frequently or infrequently are you going to the bathroom? What's the consistency of your stool? All of it. They track their energy levels. They track their hunger. Do they have any cravings? And we also look at their stress. We put this all together in a lovely little app that we have. And we then pair that with their weight and progress pictures, because we know the scale doesn't tell the whole story. But if we do collect that data over an extended period of time, look for some averages, see how the body changes as we take progress pictures every 3 weeks or once a month or so, we can start to see how your body specifically responds to a certain amount of food. We figure out that amount of food based on your macro calculation that we give you inside of the program. And then slowly but surely, we're monitoring all of this. If your weight is staying somewhat consistent, but your digestion improves and your sleep is looking better, your energy levels are better, you will then put your body in a position that come time for that calorie deficit, it will respond that much more quickly. More importantly, though, if we intentionally eat more food, it gives you the freedom, it literally gives you permission to figure out how to understand the foods that you thought were off limits in the past can fit into your day. And what I mean by that in application is, let's go back to this client as the example. She could figure out, if she did want to have the pretzels and the chips and things like that, what the right amount was for her relative to her other food preferences. But again, this is where so many people just really lack the patience, or they don't have the plan, they don't have the structure, they don't have the systems to be able to do this in a way that's quick and easy. And a lot of times it's because they'll try it for like 2 days and decide that it's not going to tell them anything. I can tell you that the fuel phase is the longest portion of the Fitness FYX program. For some people, it's 3 months. For some people, it's 4. For some, it's more than 6. And here's the reason why. One has to do with how long it takes you to get to a certain amount of calories and a certain amount of macros per your protein, your carbs, and your fat. But the other reason is because every body responds slightly differently to that change in stimulus. And whether that is putting on muscle or whether that is your body kind of staying like right where it's at, your body can stay right where it's at in terms of the scale, but you could take a few progress pictures, and because your digestion improves, because you start going to the bathroom more regularly, you will see changes in the shape of your physique. There are so many people who have this misunderstanding that if they put 2 progress pictures side by side, oh, this person must have lost like 10, 12, 15 pounds. In my own experience, I've gone through this and I've gotten to a place of where, what did I prioritize? Sleep, lowering my stress levels to the best of my ability, changing the way I was training and focusing specifically on strength training to do that, and then intentionally eating more food, which was a method of reducing stress. And I technically didn't actually lose weight. But if I put these 2 pictures side by side, the shape of my body looks totally different. So a lot of this is just a question of like, how willing of an open mind are you prepared to keep? And how willing are you to kind of like test the boundary of seeing what your body can do? In my experience, I think most people just aren't that willing because they want the results right now today. So the second half of what we teach inside of this fuel phase, other than like, well, here are the foods that we can help you figure out how do you want to put these together to get to where you want to go, it's also the mindset around it. It's also saying to yourself, okay, I'm kind of on like a fact-finding mission right now. And my goal is to collect as much information on myself as possible and just see how my body responds to it. And if you can have this perspective that that's actually a really cool opportunity versus looking at it from a place of restriction, you can then see all the amazing things that your body can do. And you find freedom in the fact that you can say yes to going out to eat with your friends with structure. The structure is talking to your coach and saying to your coach, hey, I'm going out to eat at this restaurant. I could use some help. We've talked about this in other episodes where we talk about travel tips and we talk about navigating going out to eat. And one of the things that's really important to our coaching staff is being there as a resource for our clients to be able to talk through, okay, if you make XYZ choice of ordering this food on the menu, how does that impact the way you should show up in the rest of your day? If you can start to zoom out and you can start to see your food choices over the course of a whole day versus what should I eat for breakfast or what should I eat for lunch? That's one of the questions that actually frustrates me the most from people is like, well, can you just tell me what to eat? I'm like, well, first I need to know what you want to eat. And second, if you want me to tell you what to eat for a specific meal, I have to know what else you ate that day. So to be able to teach somebody the skills to look at that on their own, that's really empowering because that is what's going to carry you through for the rest of your life. Remember, I'm talking about a client here who got started by literally just following a plan that had all of her meals packaged and ready to go and heated up for her. And we don't even need to talk about like the nutritional quality of them. The point was like the amount of calories that were in those foods were just keeping her in a calorie deficit. And maybe they had a decent amount of protein in them. I don't know for sure, but the disconnect was her then needing to understand why those foods should make up her day, if at all. And now, fast forward to about 5 months later, we put her in a position where on average, she was consuming maybe around like 15 to 1,600 calories, all the way up to almost 2,100 calories. She nearly increased her carbohydrate intake by like 60 grams of carbs. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I still don't really understand what macros are, Krysta, so you're talking a language I don't get, I'll put it to you this way. The difference of 60 grams of carbs is you saying no to the bagel that you really want to have for breakfast. She could say yes to things like that. Within moderation, of course. Could she have a bagel and pizza and pasta all in the same day between breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Maybe not. At certain points, she probably could, but what would suffer as a result? Digestion would probably be the first thing. Those foods are a little bit heavier. They're a little bit harder to process. So how might we balance that out? She now knows, okay, the bagel for breakfast just means some sort of adjustment or some sort of trade-off when it comes to lunch or dinner. But there was a version of her that was like, I could never have a bagel again, or I could never have that pizza again, or I should just cut it out for 3 to 4 months at a time, get the results I want, go back to the way I was eating before, and then all of a sudden regained that same 10 pounds I just worked so hard to get rid of. That literally doesn't make any sense. That is like, to me, the definition of insanity because it's doing that over and over again, somehow expecting a different result, but still gaining and losing that same little bit of weight when she could really focus on how she feels and how she shows up in the world on a day-to-day basis. Making choices, making herself a priority, and still being able to have fun with it. Being able to try new recipes, being able to spend time in the kitchen and maybe experimenting with different ingredients, but also not feeling like she had to be a slave to some recipe list that had 72 different spices and things like that. Because that's always something that people will bring to me as a frustration. Hey, I'm short on time. I don't want to spend a ton of time in the kitchen, or I need to keep things simple. That's where we come together and find those solutions that are best tailored to you. But we then put your body into this position where we say, okay, great. As much as your body could adapt to the 1,300 calories that we don't want it to adapt to, it can also adapt to the other side. It can also adapt to the 2,000 calories. If we do it progressively, if we're slowly adding carbohydrates, fat, additional protein, and then paying attention to those other markers that I listed. So many people will just try to fixate on, let me increase my food, turn around and blame reverse dieting and saying, oh, well, that didn't work. And it's like, okay, but what structure did you have in place? Were you actually monitoring the other information that was going to help us determine whether that amount of food makes sense for you? Because there is and can be a threshold to it. The threshold can be that, yeah, your body might start to rebound in the sense that the scale goes up a bit. Our goal as coaches is to minimize the amount that the scale goes up, but really focus on, again, that change in physique that can come from improved digestion, that comes from better sleep. Because if you don't put your body in this additionally stressed state, really want to emphasize this part because this is what gets people a little bit lost, understanding that that deficit is a stress state. If you're constantly running around in that stress state, it is like having very minimal gas in your car and needing to be always on the search for that gas station. You don't need that distraction. You need your body to perform and be at your best self. Because if you feel like your best self, you're going to continue to move along with this plan. I would never want to sign up for something long-term where you could literally guarantee me, oh, well, like you're eating less food, so your energy levels aren't going to be great. You're going to have trouble sleeping. But those are the side effects of a calorie deficit. So our goal is to help you spend the time learning how to not be in the calorie deficit so that when we get there, it can be shorter and it can be a little quicker because you adjusted your body to get used to a different set of calories. So to really hammer that point home, let's use this client's data as the example. So she worked herself up from about that 1,500 calorie range on average once we kind of got consistent, moving away from like really restrictive methods during the week and then a free-for-all, so to speak, on the weekends, to an average of about 1,600 calories. 2-3 months go by, we went from 1,700, 1,800, all the way up to 2,000 calories. And now we sent the signal to her body. We said, hey, body, you are used to these 2,000 calories. In that time, she did lose several pounds, but she lost that weight because she was so consistent Monday through Sunday, not just because she was eating more food. The consistency, the planning, the prioritizing of getting better sleep, of focusing on her strength training, hydrating, getting her steps in, all of those different levers that we can pull to help you lose body fat, we need each piece of the puzzle to get there. We don't have to have them all perfect and firing on all cylinders at any given time. Not every week's going to go like that because that's just not life. But if we get it 80% of the time and we're okay with where the weeks we don't nail it, that just means, okay, we might delay our progress a week or so. 1 week in the grand scheme of things, 52 weeks in a year, 1 week is not going to kill you. If we can get behind that thought process, we then fast forward to a few months later. In this particular case, it was about 4 months. And now she's ready. She's in the right headspace and she's in a position, her body is in a position to be like, okay, great. We're really used to this 2,000 calorie mark. So guess what? We just created this window. We were used to 1,500 calories before. Now we're really used to 2,000 calories. There's a white space in between there. We got about 500 calories to play with. And if you were really used to 2,000, I can promise you that if we drop you from 2,000 to 1,800 and we double down on our food quality, meaning we're getting like fiber and leafy greens and veggies and fruits and all those things and still getting our proteins in and minimizing inflammation where we can, you will 100% start to lose body fat, and it will happen for you a little bit faster as long as you're managing stress, you're getting your steps in, and you're strength training. I can't guarantee that it happens super fast for every single person because you have to execute and you have to demonstrate to your coach, but more importantly to yourself, that you can handle what we call that basic foundation, that you can handle everything that we developed in that fuel phase, that you can commit to getting your steps in, that you can commit to getting your workouts done, that you can commit and do it on a regular basis. It's literally proving to yourself that this isn't just like, okay, I'm running through this short time period, and in this short time period, all I'm going to do is just count all my calories and count my macros and watch all these things that I'm eating. No, it has to be a choice that you will literally continue to show up that way. Like you're just wired that's your day-to-day. That's your non-negotiable. We then fast forward to what will be in our next episode, the focus phase. We are now taking this person whose body was really used to 2,000 calories and saying, okay, great. Let's play around with 1,800 calories. Let's really prioritize whole food sources and let's see what happens. That's where the magic of that calorie deficit comes in. But what's even better is gone are the days of that 1,200 calorie deficit where we really, really, really had to remove the fun because quite frankly, if you want to maintain a 1,200 calorie diet, it's going to be pretty tough for you to go out to eat. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world where somebody tells me that, hey, you can't go out to eat. Hey, you can't enjoy the pizza. Hey, you can't enjoy those bagels, because food brings enjoyment, and food doesn't have to just be looked at as like this thing that fuels our body and that's it. It's social. You have your taste buds for a reason, and we want it to be fun and we want it to be enjoyable. So if we marry that mindset to this approach, it really actually does become fun. Are there days where maybe you're like, the last thing I want to do is track my food? Yes. But if you choose to have a relationship to it where you understand that this is going to help bring awareness to get you to where you want to go, it doesn't become such a nuisance anymore. But you need time to be able to start to feel that way. You literally need to get your reps in. We've all been newbies in the gym at some point or another, and it's nerve-wracking and it's never really fun to walk into a gym for the first time, or maybe after a long time away. Like, I know that if I've gotten off my gym routine, I really have to talk myself into hitting my workout, and you have to get your reps in. And if you get your reps in, you will get stronger. The same idea holds true when it comes to your nutrition. And if you put the two together, well, then you have the recipe for the utmost success. And I think that's really awesome. So before we roll into the next episode and start talking about all things focus phase, where we actually get into that calorie deficit, I'm going to end it here and hope that this gave you a little bit more insight into what we do with our clients. And maybe, just maybe, you might want to become one of those next members of the Fitness FYX family. So if you're interested and you want to win that 6 months free giveaway, like I said at the top of this episode, I can't think of a better sign. I can't think of a better time for you to finally make the commitment to yourself. This doesn't have to be overwhelming if you look for accountability and support. This doesn't have to be something that you delay until next year. There's no reason for it to, because this is your life. And whenever anybody asks, like, well, what is your goal? What are you doing this for? I personally love the answer of, well, I'm doing this for my life. Because you are literally doing this for the rest of your life either way. So you can choose to make the most of it, or you can choose to keep yourself exactly stuck in the same spot that you were before and let a whole other summer roll by. How about you embrace this opportunity and you learn how to navigate this summer in a way that you get to say yes to all of the things you want to do, all of the trips you want to take, all of the events you want to go to, but maybe even achieve a lot of awesome goals along the way. This could be the summer that you actually prove yourself wrong from those past summers. If you raise your hand and you take advantage of the opportunity, you ask for the help. So jump over to the show notes, head over to any of our Instagram accounts. You could follow me at the Krysta Huber. You could check us out on our podcast Instagram account at thefix.officialpod. You can check us out over at the Fitness FYX. And then Coach Alyssa and Coach Kara, you'll start to see more of their pages popping up. Alyssa's is at Real Nutrition and Kara's is at CB Fit Mama. And we are so excited to welcome them as leaders in the Fitness FYX community and get them connected with all of you guys here on the show very soon and across all of our platforms and as coaches with our amazing clients. So don't wait. The application is going to close. So you only have through this weekend to take the leap. So again, if you're listening to this episode live, when it drops on Thursday the 30th, you will have until just the first few days of April to make that decision. And then we'll start going through applications and have our winner announced by the end of the first week of the month. And then we'll go from there. And we'll continue to grow this amazing Fitness FYX community. So if you have any questions, you know, the best thing to do is slide into my DMs, reach out to me there. I always love chatting with you guys, and I'm excited to expand more on phase 3 of the Fitness FYX program, our focus phase, in our next episode. As always, from wherever you're listening from, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will catch you guys next time.